What happens when a razor-sharp late-night host tries to corner a courtroom-hardened attorney? When sarcasm meets substance and the punchline doesn't land? This isn't just a battle of wit. It's a showdown between two different Americas, and neither side came to lose. The studio lights were warm, almost seductive, casting a polished sheen on the set of The Daily Show. Trevor Noah adjusted his jacket and looked toward the camera with that familiar sparkle in his eye, a mix of charm, confidence, and just a dash of mischief. Tonight's guest, he began, once fought drug cartels, big pharma, and liberal media, all before lunch. Former Florida Attorney General, legal analyst, and conservative firebrand. Please welcome Pam Bondi. Polite applause rose from the audience, laced with a bit of skepticism. Trevor's fans knew the routine. Invite a guest from the other side and lace the evening with clever jabs. But this time felt different. Bondi entered with calm elegance. No flashy dress, just a crisp, dark suit. The kind of wardrobe that says, I'm not here for the optics, I'm here for the record. Trevor extended his hand. Welcome to enemy territory, he joked. Pam shook it firmly. I've been in worse places, she replied, flashing a smile that wasn't meant to be cute. It was tactical. The tone was set. Trevor leaned in, all charm. So Pam, do you ever wake up and think, wow, I really miss being attacked on Twitter by 300,000 liberals before breakfast? The crowd chuckled. Bondi didn't. I miss justice being pursued without hashtags, she replied. The courtroom's quieter but far more honest. Trevor blinked. A beat, then a smirk. Touché. He moved in for the real hit. Let's talk about your favorite topic, Trump. You defended him through everything, Ukraine, the impeachments, January 6th. Are you still on that train, or did it finally run out of steam? Bondi's eyes didn't flicker. I defended the Constitution. When people confuse the two, democracy loses. Trevor sat back slightly, eyebrows raised. And when the president breaks norms? Pam leaned forward. Breaking norms isn't breaking laws. If it were, every comedian who's pushed a boundary would be in handcuffs, including you. Laughter, nervous, not loud, but present. Trevor narrowed his gaze, intrigued. Are you comparing jokes to executive orders? No, I'm reminding you that our system is built to withstand controversy, not cancel it. The crowd murmured. Trevor glanced to his producer, then back to her. You're good, he said. I'm prepared, she answered. What happens when the crowd laughs, but the guest doesn't blink? What if the joke stops being funny and starts being revealing? This is where civility is tested, truth is provoked, and only one voice leaves echoing. Trevor adjusted his tie. His eyes darted toward the audience, then back to Bondi, gauging whether the heat in the room was theatrical or real. So Pam, he said smoothly, you talk a lot about truth, but how do you reconcile your version of truth with a president who lied often? The audience chuckled. Pam didn't even blink. I reconcile it, she said, by separating policy from personality. I wasn't defending a man. I was defending outcomes. I don't have to like the messenger if the message builds prosperity, peace, and strength. Trevor cocked his head. Peace? January 6th was peace? Bondi didn't raise her voice. January 6th was a disgrace, but blaming the entire right for that is like blaming all comedians when one of you bombs a set. One moment doesn't define a movement. The audience tensed. Trevor leaned in. But don't you think tone matters? Trump's tone, your tone feels combative, like you're not trying to unite just to win. Pam sat up straighter. Truth doesn't always unite, Trevor. Sometimes it divides, but in the long run, it clarifies. And I'll take clarity over comfort any day. Trevor smirked. You came with quotes, huh? She didn't flinch. No, I came with standards. The crowd stirred again. Some clapped. Others were quiet. He pivoted. Okay, so let's get personal. You're a devout Christian. Do you think politics and faith should mix? Pam nodded. Faith isn't a campaign. It's a compass. I don't bring it to control others. I bring it to keep myself accountable. Trevor arched an eyebrow. But do you ever worry that the people watching you are taking that faith and using it to shame, exclude, or judge? I worry more, Pam said firmly, that we've stopped making room for people who believe in anything greater than themselves. We shame people for believing too deeply, but celebrate those who believe in nothing. That's not progress, that's decay. The studio was stunned. Trevor took a long pause. It was the first time in the interview he didn't immediately have a comeback. He finally said, "You know, I've had politicians on this stage, and many of them dance around, but you walk straight through." Pam smiled. "That's because I don't see this as performance. I see it as purpose." Trevor shook his head slightly, half amused, half impressed. "You're unshakable. I'll give you that," he said. Pam nodded once. "And you're sharper than most, but even sharp blades can dull with the wrong target." He laughed. "Are you calling me dull?" "No," she said, standing her ground. "I'm calling you too smart to waste your aim." What happens when the guest outlasts the sarcasm? When laughter fades and something deeper rises in its place? The last act isn't always the loudest, but it's the one they remember. The studio felt different now. Not colder, just quieter. The playful rhythm of late-night TV had been replaced with something heavier, something sharper. Trevor Noah, still smiling, leaned back in his chair, but there was calculation behind his eyes now. "You know, Pam," he said, "a lot of people in this audience disagree with you. Some strongly. Doesn't that bother you?" Pam didn't hesitate. "No, disagreement is the price of a free society. I'm not here to be agreed with. I'm here to be understood. And if people listen long enough, maybe they'll realize we're not as far apart as they think." Trevor paused. "You sound like someone who still believes in the center. But a lot of people feel that center is gone." Pam looked at him carefully. "That's because we've let outrage replace dialogue. We've taught people to win arguments instead of seek solutions. I'm not interested in shouting. I'm interested in building." Trevor folded his hands. "But you've been on stages where people do shout, where people do accuse. You've stood by policies that people say hurt minorities, marginalized groups, women." Pam raised a hand gently. "And I've also stood up for unborn children, for victims of human trafficking, for families ruined by fentanyl. It's not one or the other, Trevor. That's the false choice your industry keeps pushing." He didn't flinch, but he didn't interrupt. "You think compassion is only progressive," she continued, "but I've sat in courtrooms with crying mothers, buried friends who overdosed, worked with women rescued from abuse, and they didn't ask about party. They asked for justice." The audience fell still. This wasn't about red versus blue anymore. Trevor's voice lowered. "Have you ever doubted it all? The causes, the labels, the fight?" Pam's voice softened. "I've doubted myself. I've cried after tough verdicts. I've questioned whether it's worth the smear campaigns, the threats, the isolation. But then I remember a case I won that saved a child, or a survivor who hugged me outside the courtroom. And I remember it's worth it." Trevor nodded, slowly. "You're a lot of things, Pam," he said, "but afraid isn't one of them." Pam tilted her head slightly. "Neither are you, so let's stop pretending we're enemies and start admitting we're just different kinds of fighters." The audience applauded, louder this time. Then Pam turned toward the audience. "You may not agree with me. That's okay. But what matters most is that we still have a space where both sides can be heard. The moment we lose that, we lose democracy itself." She turned back to Trevor. "I didn't come here expecting applause. I came here because I still believe conversations like this matter. And I hope you do too." Trevor smiled, this time more genuinely. "I do." Clips of the final exchange went viral. Headlines flooded social media. Pam Bondi flips the room on Trevor Noah. From clash to clarity, Bondi reclaims the mic. What shocked people wasn't the confrontation. It was the resolution. Two ideological adversaries staring each other down, not with hatred, but with a kind of reluctant respect. Pam's closing quote became a trending soundbite. "I don't speak to be liked. I speak to be clear. Because clarity, real clarity, is the first step to change." Trevor, in a rare post-show tweet, wrote, "Tonight reminded me that strength comes in many forms. Pam Bondi brought hers, respect." Within days, think pieces poured in. Liberal and conservative commentators alike dissected the interview, not to declare a winner, but to reflect on a tone that had become rare in political media. measured, firm, human. Clips were used in classrooms, reposted by advocacy groups, and discussed on panels about civil discourse. One university professor called it a masterclass in disagreeing without dehumanizing. And when Pam Bondi was later asked what she thought made that interview so impactful, her answer was simple. I showed up with truth, not talking points. And I didn't come to fight. I came to finish the noise. Sometimes it's not who speaks loudest. It's who refuses to be shaken. If this moment moved you, if you believe dialogue matters more than division, share it. Because in a world drowning in noise, the quietest strength is often the most unforgettable.